My sister called me an embarrassment at her wedding. Later, her boss said, "Interesting," and handed me a contract worth $220,000, while she stood frozen. When Isabel was dragging me across the marble floor of the Grand Meridian Hotel ballroom, her fingers dug into my forearm. This occurred while she was dragging me. A total of $20,000 was required to purchase her wedding attire. Because I had successfully negotiated a reduction in the final price from $24,000, I was aware of this result. The smile that she wore was disproportionately wide and pointed. This was the kind of look that suggested that someone was about to burst into tears. She yelled out, "Mr. Harrington!" And her voice was loud enough to be heard over the jazz quartet, as well as the champagne-fueled conversation that was accompanying the conversation. "I absolutely need you to meet someone very special." A halt was placed on the conversations that were taking place in the vicinity of us. When everyone looked at me, I felt a weakening in my stomach. David Harrington, who was 55 years old and the vice president of operations at Parkview Financial Group, was wearing a charcoal Tom Ford suit that was probably more expensive than the monthly rent that I pay. Harrington was wearing the suit. It was necessary for him to travel all the way from Boston to be present at Isabel's wedding, in order to be there. Over the course of the past 2 years, she had been working as his executive assistant, and she never stopped gushing about how important he was and how prestigious her position was. When Isabel made the announcement, she said, "This is my brother Ethan," and her voice was filled with the emotion that comes with performing effectively. Our family was made to feel ashamed as a result of the comments, which struck their target like a punch to the body. Because of the heat, my neck started to swell. She laughed to herself in private. High, cruel, and practiced. Still single at the age of 40, still engaging in some insignificant consulting business that nobody comprehends. The gesture was so inconsequential that it was devastating, and she shrugged her shoulders. There are some people who never seem to figure out what they want out of life. The laughter came from my father, who was sitting at the head table. Approximately 10 years ago, we gradually stopped expecting a lot from Ethan. By covering her mouth and laughing, my mother gave the impression that Isabel had just told her the most hilarious joke she had ever heard. There are some individuals who are unable to determine what they want to do with their lives at any point in their lives. At the very least, we have one child who is successful. I stood there motionless. I could feel my hands shaking at my sides. 40 years of remaining unnoticed, of being the quiet one who took care of everything while Isabel took credit for its accomplishments. After that, she was humiliated in front of everyone at her wedding. The wedding that I had almost completely planned. That being said, Mr. Harrington did not laugh. Perfectly still, he sat there. Halfway to his mouth, he reached for a champagne flute. There was a brief moment when his gaze shifted from Isabel to my parents, and then it returned to me. The expression on his face was so unreadable that it appeared to be carved out of granite. He whispered, "Ethan." His name. It was a complete and total silence. I was wondering what kind of consulting you do. I was taken aback by the fact that he was even addressing me, and I blinked. In addition to providing services in corporate restructuring, I also offer financial consulting. During times of crisis, I provide assistance to businesses that are small to medium in size. I was wondering how long you've been doing this. I am 15 years old. He gave a slow nod and returned his champagne to the table without taking a sip. Very interesting. Now he was looking at Isabel. As if water were passing through shattered glass, all of the warmth emanated from his face. "Isabel, I ask that you come to my office first thing on Monday morning. I need to see you. At 8 o'clock. Precise. Try not to be late." He stood up, made some adjustments to his cufflinks, and then proceeded to walk in the direction of the exit without uttering a single word. It was suffocating due to the silence. An expression of bewilderment appeared on Isabel's face as her smile wavered. Both of my parents looked at each other, with my father's forehead furrowed and my mother's mouth hanging slightly open. Nobody was able to comprehend what had just taken place. I never did either. My hands were still shaking on the steering wheel as I drove home to my small house on the outskirts of Riverside. 20 minutes later, I excused myself from the meeting, claiming that I was suffering from a headache. I was the one who kept to myself, the one who did not require attention, the one who chose not to demand praise, and the one who simply took care of things while everyone else was in the spotlight. Even though Isabel was 4 years younger than her, she had always been the center of attention. In addition to being the homecoming queen and the leader of the drama club, she was also the recipient of a full scholarship to attend Boston University. For as long as I could remember, I had been the son who was considered to be invisible. Isabel at her graduation, Isabel on her first day at Parkview Financial, Isabel receiving an award from the Chamber of Commerce, my own college degree, which I had earned while working 3 jobs, and a congratulations card that my mother forgot to sign. All of these images were taken by Isabel. The request for small favors had been made by Isabel, who had called 3 months prior to the wedding. The picture of her was displayed in each and every room of the house that my parents had decorated. Ethan, I need you to handle a few vendor issues because you are good at boring logistics stuff. I need you to handle their problems. I was able to negotiate with 14 different vendors, compare quotes, catch a catering company that was trying to charge for services that they hadn't provided, and catch the florist who was trying to upcharge by $900. All of these things were necessary because of the few vendor issues that I encountered. The venue contract was renegotiated by me, which resulted in a savings of $4,500 for her on the deposit. For the purpose of securing the photographer, I made a payment of $3,500 2 weeks before the wedding, because she had forgotten her checkbook. Her assurance was that she would repay me without delay. It was never done by her. She received unending praise from my parents. Isabel is extremely well organized. She is doing a wonderful job of managing this wedding and is very professional. My name was never mentioned by them at any point. When I arrived at the reception, I was seated at table 15, which was tucked away in the back corner close to the kitchen doors. I was surrounded by distant cousins that I had only met a couple of times. When I arrived at my office on Monday morning, which was a modest suite in a professional building that I shared with an insurance agent and a certified public accountant, I found a black Mercedes S-Class parked in the parking lot. I was surprised to see the vehicle there. My parents and Daniel's family were also present at the head table, where Isabel was seated with her new husband Daniel, as well as my parents. I was a placeholder, an afterthought, and the source of embarrassment and humiliation. David Harrington emerged from the building carrying a portfolio made of leather. He had a solemn expression on his face as he made his way out. There was a blue suit that he was wearing. In the course of his approach to me, he approached me and asked, "Grant, do you have any time to talk?" The office was unassuming but professional, with a tidy desk, filing cabinets, and framed certificates hanging on the wall. The state universities awarded me a bachelor's degree in economics, Northeastern University awarded me a master's degree in business administration, and I had 15 years of client testimonials under my belt. "Are you familiar with a furniture company that was operating approximately 14 years ago?" David Harrington said, looking around with what appeared to be real admiration. He asked me as he was sitting across from my desk. "Reed Furniture in Hartford." The name hit me like a freight train. I remember. The owner was an older man, possibly in his late 40s, who was on the verge of losing everything. That was me. He placed the portfolio on my desk. When I was drowning in debt 14 years ago, my father had just passed away, leaving me with a business that was hemorrhaging money. I was 3 weeks away from filing for bankruptcy. Then a young man walked into my store, looked at my books without charging me a dime, and told me exactly what I was doing wrong. My throat tightened as he said, "You spent 7 weeks working completely free." After a brief pause he said, "When I tried to pay you, you said that you couldn't take money from someone who reminded you of your grandfather. You saved my business, Ethan." After 4 years, I sold the store for a profit that allowed me to graduate with a master's degree and grow my profession. It was a complete stranger who decided to assist me when he had no motive to do so, and that is how all I have done began. I'd forgotten about Reed Furniture. It had been one of my first clients when I was just starting out, still idealistic, still thinking hard work and helping people would earn me respect. "When your sister introduced you at the wedding," Harrington continued, "when she called you the embarrassment of the family, I recognized your name immediately." At that precise moment, he opened the portfolio and uttered the words, "Ethan Grant, the man who saved my life." I did not fire Isabel as a result of the statements that she made on Saturday night. For the past 10 months, I have been researching her and gathering information about her. It has been brought to our attention that she has been fabricating expense reports, taking credit for work that junior associates have already completed, and using business email for engaging in questionable personal activities. Someone strewn documents across my desk, including spreadsheets, printouts from emails, and highlighted sections that revealed irregularities in the hours that were reported, fabricated client meetings, and costs that were attributed to the company for personal things. The wedding not only confirmed something that I already knew about her personality, but it also confirmed something else. According to Harrington, the pattern was discovered 7 months ago by Lindsay Evans, who has worked in corporate forensic accounting for 24 years. Evans is credited with first discovering the pattern. The assertion was made that Isabel had successfully negotiated a contract with Patterson Industries during the course of the negotiations. In all honesty, Adam Foster, a junior analyst, was the one who was in charge of negotiating the deal. Additionally, Isabel accepted the commission and added her name to the final papers. Both of these actions were taken by Isabel. $50,000 in total amount. The papers were the sole focus of my attention. An additional factor to take into consideration is the fact that she has been writing off her personal expenses as business expenses. Over the course of 20 months, she made more than $85,000 in fraudulent charges. These charges included subscriptions to gyms, apparel, and a trip to Turks and Caicos that she claimed was for the purpose of client development. Why are you telling me this? Our subsidiary companies are currently undergoing a process of reorganization as a result of the fact that I have appointed you to the position of consultant. There is a total of $45 million in revenue generated by 3 different companies. At that precise moment, he slipped a contract across the desk and said, "I need someone I can trust, someone with integrity." He then proceeded to say, 6-month project, $220,000. I was completely speechless. Harrington continued, "There's one more thing." While he was very careful with the words he chose to use. As the investigation progressed, Lindsay became aware of peculiar patterns in Isabel's personal finances, including significant transfers made from accounts that were shared with your respective parents. It was during this time that Lindsay observed these patterns. "If I were you, I would investigate any family financial arrangements with extreme caution. I would like to make sure that you are not taken advantage of." During the following week, I devoted my time to searching through old documents. These included bank statements that I had saved from my time as an undergraduate student, letters that my grandfather had written to me before he passed away, and eventually, the truth. When my grandfather passed away 17 years ago, the school fund that he had established had a total of $100,000 in it. He had established the fund. The will stipulated that it would be divided equally between his 2 grandchildren, with each of them receiving a sum of $50,000. It was verified that Isabel had received her agreed-upon payment in full. The money that she received was sufficient to cover the entirety of her college education, as well as the purchase of her first automobile and her apartment in Boston. My parents had invested their money in a business venture that was not successful, and I had a portion of the investment in the company before it failed. They chose not to reveal this information to me at any point. The only reason I had college debts was because they had stolen my inheritance, and I had spent the previous 12 years paying them off. I had no other reason for having loans. It was clear from the records that the bank had kept. After withdrawing $50,000 from my account, my father transferred the money to Isabel's account 4 months later. This occurred after he had taken the money out of my account. She graduated without any outstanding student loans, while I was working 3 jobs and eating ramen for dinner 6 nights a week. She had graduated without any student loans. My eyesight became blurry as I sat in my office, doing nothing but staring at the paperwork until it became out of focus. 2 weeks after the wedding, Isabel called me on the phone expressing her happiness. Her voice was soft and pleading, which was a stark contrast to the cruel treatment she received at the reception. "Ethan, we need to talk. This thing with Mr. Harrington, it's a misunderstanding. You know how these corporate investigations blow things out of proportion. Do I? Just tell them you helped me with some of those reports that we collaborated. We're family, Ethan. Family protects each other. You called me the embarrassment of the family in front of 100 people. That was a joke. God, you're so sensitive. I was just trying to be funny. Funny. Look, if you don't help me, this could destroy my entire career. They're talking about criminal charges, Ethan. I could go to prison. You committed fraud, Isabel, because I was under so much pressure. Do you have any idea how stressful my job is? I made mistakes. That's all, mistakes. But if you tell them we worked together, I'm not going to lie for you. You owe me." Her tone became harsh, and the mask began to fall apart. "I let you be part of my wedding. I introduced you to important people. You owe me." I hung up the phone. After a period of 3 days, David Harrington personally summoned me to a conference room located within the regional office of Parkview Financial Group. In addition to him, he was accompanied by Lindsay Evans, who was in her mid-50s, had silver hair, sharp eyes, and was wearing designer glasses. Andrew Miles, who was in his late 40s and was the director of legal affairs for the company, had the exhausted expression of someone who had seen too many cases similar to this one. Lindsay said, "We found something else," as she moved a folder across the conference table across the table. "During the forensic audit, we discovered emails in Isabel's sent folder that appeared to come from your email address." The pit of my stomach sank. Instantaneously, Andrew stated, "They are not genuine. It was designed to give the impression that you were providing her with guidance on how to manipulate expense reports and client documentation, It was her intention to make you appear to be a co-conspirator. The emails were displayed to me by Lindsay as she opened her laptop. Their email address was very similar to mine, but they used a domain that was slightly different from mine. They had my name. Detailed instructions on how to falsify reports and how to claim credit for the work of others were included in the content, which was extremely damaging. The metadata is what tells the real story, Lindsay reiterated further. Every single one of these emails was created from Isabel's work computer. The IP address traces back to her desk. The timestamps show they were all created in a 3-hour window last Tuesday night. After she knew we were investigating, she tried to frame you. Andrew concluded by saying, if this had worked, you'd be facing criminal charges alongside her. I was unable to take a breath. In an effort to protect herself, my own sister had attempted to destroy me. This particular hearing for the company took place on a Friday afternoon. Despite the fact that I was not required to be present, Harrington extended an invitation to observe from a room adjacent to the one that had one-way glass. Within the group of 4 executives, Isabel was seated across from them. There is a woman named Patricia Carmichael who is the head of human resources, the chief financial officer, and the chief legal officer. She has 30 years of experience in the field of corporate investigations. They presented the evidence in a methodical manner, including the fabricated emails, the stolen work, the fabricated expense reports, and the metadata that supported the claim that she had created them herself. There were attempts made by Isabel to enchant them, to cry, and to be angry. There was no success. In a tone that was icy and businesslike, Patricia Carmichael addressed Isabel Grant from the audience. You are terminated effective immediately. The company will be pursuing full restitution for fraudulent expenses totaling $85,000. We will also be reporting this matter to law enforcement for potential criminal prosecution. When Isabel stood up, she said, you can't do this. My family has connections. The words, my father, your father has no connections that matter here, were spoken in a low voice by Harrington. You're done, Isabel. Security will escort you out. Observing her exit through a back elevator, I watched her go. Along each side, there was a security guard who was carrying her personal belongings in a banker's box. In the evening of that day, I made my first phone call to my parents since attending the wedding. Ethan, Mom said in a bright and oblivious tone of voices. We were just talking about you. Did you hear about poor Isabel? She's going through something difficult at work. I told her you might be able to help her find a new job. I know about Grandpa's education fund. There is no sound. I know you took my $50,000 and gave it to Isabel. I have the bank records. I have the transfer receipts. I know everything. Even more silence. And then the voice of my father. In a defensive stance. That money was invested. It was stolen. You stole my inheritance and gave it to your favorite child. While I worked 3 jobs and ate ramen, she was living in a luxury apartment with my money. Isabel needed opportunities, Mom said, her voice trembling for a moment. She had so much potential and I had nothing. I had no potential. I was just the embarrassment. Dad said, we were going to pay you back. To the child. Eventually, when things were better. 18 years. You had 18 years. Instead, you laughed when she humiliated me at her wedding. A wedding I planned that I paid $3,500 for. I ended the call before they could come back to me. The family got together for a meal at my Aunt Helen's house. This took place 4 weeks after the wedding. After receiving a personal phone call from Aunt Helen, I almost decided not to go. In her words, please come, she had pleaded. It's important. Trust me. My entire family was gathered together when I walked in the door. My parents, along with my aunts, uncles and cousins, were seated in a stiff manner at one end of the table. There was no sign of Isabel. Daniel was not one of them. Although she was 72 years old, Aunt Helen was still in her spine as she stood at the head of the table. I invited everyone here tonight because I have something to say, she said in her announcement. For 40 years I have watched this family treat Ethan like he doesn't exist, like he doesn't matter. I'm done being silent. Suddenly my father began to say something. She raised her hand aloft. She turned her attention to the room and said, John, please take a seat. You'll listen for once. Let me tell you about the nephew you've all ignored. 10 years ago I was diagnosed with breast cancer. The treatment cost more than I had. I was going to sell my house. Ethan paid my medical bills anonymously, $12,000. I didn't find out it was him until 3 years later. The color stopped in my mother's face. When Daniel, the son of John and Martha, needed assistance with applying to colleges, who spent hours assisting him with writing essays, preparing for tests, and navigating the process of applying for financial aid. Ethan. Daniel was awarded a full scholarship. Ethan's assistance was never acknowledged by any of you at any point in time, she said, pulling out documents, printed emails and letters. When John and Martha lost their jobs during the 2009 recession, who co-signed their car loan so they could get to job interviews? Ethan. When their mortgage was about to default, who gave them $9,000 interest-free? Ethan. The eyes of my parents took in the table. This is the man you called the embarrassment of the family, Aunt Helen said, her voice breaking. The man who's been quietly saving all of you for decades while you praised Isabel, who it turns out is a criminal. The room was silent. Maybe, Aunt Helen said softly. It's time you took a good look at who actually matters in this family. Isabel showed up at my office 8 weeks after the termination. She looked exhausted, hair unwashed, clothes wrinkled, eyes red from crying. Can I come in? She asked. I let her sit. Didn't offer coffee. I've been going to therapy, she said quietly. Twice a week. My therapist, Dr. Lisa Patton, she's been practicing for 22 years. She asked me to write down every time you helped me, every time you were there and I took credit or ignored you. She pulled out a notebook. Pages and pages of handwriting. I got to page 43 before I couldn't write anymore. 43 pages of times you showed up for me and I treated you like you were nothing. Tears ran down her face. I always thought you were weak because you never fought back because you just took it. But you weren't weak. You were stronger than any of us. You were better than us. And I destroyed everything trying to be someone I thought mattered when you were the only one who actually did. She stood. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I finally see you. Really see you. And I'm sorry, Ethan, for all of it. She left before I could respond. My parents invited me to dinner 10 weeks after the wedding. There were only the 3 of us at their residence. I was on the verge of saying no. However, there was something broken in the way that my father spoke to me over the phone that caused me to agree. A significant number of Isabel's photographs had been removed. The appearance of the house was altered, smaller. As he poured coffee, Dad said, I've been thinking about your grandfather. While his hands were shaking. How proud he was when you graduated college. He told me you reminded him of himself. Hard-working, honest, strong. I paid him no attention, Dad went on to say. Isabel was the one who had the most genuine aspirations, he was told. I was so focused on her achievements that I forgot to see yours. Across the table, Mom extended her hand. I refrained from taking her hand. As she spoke, tears streamed down her face. I thought you were strong enough not to need us, she said. You never vented your frustrations, and you never sought assistance. I told myself that meant you were fine, that you didn't need a mother like Isabel did. But I was wrong, she sobbed. It meant that you were fine. You did need me. You needed both of us and we failed you. We completely failed you as parents. Father's voice was trembling. I stole your inheritance because I believed Isabel would make better use of it because I thought she was more important than you. The decision was the worst thing I've ever done. But I've spent the past 17 years convincing myself that it was the best option. Despite the fact that they were crying and sitting there broken, I felt nothing but something. Certainly not forgiveness, not at this time, but perhaps the possibility of it in the future. I need time, I said to myself. Years probably, and I need you to understand that I'm not the embarrassment anymore. I never was. You just didn't want to see me. We see you now, Dad murmured to his son. Finally. And you're extraordinary. 6 months after the wedding, Richard Harrington and I launched a program through Parkview Financial Group that offers free restructuring services to small businesses that are experiencing a crisis. It was referred to as the Second Chance Initiative as well. One of the first businesses that we were able to save was a bakery in Hartford that was owned by a family and reminded me of Reed Furniture. When I informed the proprietor that the consultation would not cost her anything, she broke down in tears. The question that she posed was, why would you help me? Because someone helped me once, I explained to myself. And I'm paying it forward. The article that was written about the initiative in the local newspaper was sent to me by my parents, along with a note that read, "Proud of you." At long last, I tucked it away in a drawer. It wasn't because I was dependent on their approval anymore, rather, it was because I no longer needed it. A card was sent to me by Isabel 3 months after that event. She had accepted a position as a junior accountant at a minor company, where she was earning only a quarter of what she had previously earned. The card had a clean design. Not you, but we were the ones who caused the embarrassment. Please accept my gratitude for demonstrating to me what it means to be honest. It was not because I had forgiven her that I found that card sitting on my desk. Not at this time. The reason for this was that she had finally seen me for the very first time. It's possible that in the long run, that will be sufficient.